You can fish it fast or slow, and a lot of times I'll bring it up and break the surface with it. There's one. Yeah. Okay, that's cast number 2, fish number 2. So I think we've cured the hook setup problem. Oh, you got a torker there. I was running it on the surface, fast like a topwater. So there's trout up here. He's a good one. Oh, I should hope to shout. Okay, it's about time that I described the Jerkaholic jig. Out of all the videos, we've never really shown the jig itself, but here's what it looks like. Now this is based on a Mustad 327-24 hook. That's 4-aught, and it's a very sharp hook, fine wire, small barb, good smooth radius bend. That was the hook I was looking for, and you know it's got a low eye, so you got plenty of room for hook set. So the main feature of this is the lead is clear in the back, and it's basically a new concept as far as I know, because I haven't found any other jigs quite like this. But the idea of having the weight in the back is that your jig will, I call it walk the dog, go back and forth, it jerks all around. In fact, we first called it an acrobat because of all the motions that it made, but found out that was a trademark infringement, so we came up with the name Jerkaholic. And then you notice that there is a keeper up in front. And when I first tried this out, before we had it fully completed, I didn't have that keeper up there, and the plastic had come back and ball up in the hook bent, and we missed fish. So I made this keeper up in the front, just enough lead so I can have that keeper coming out, and you see it's pointed, and I use hard lead so it'll maintain that point. So you push the plastic on like you would just about any kind of a jig, and you put it up over that and press down, it comes through. Let me grab one here that's rigged up so you can see that. In fact, sometimes I'll cut a slot in there, but you can see how the keeper's coming through. And this is what it looks like inside the bait. Now this is a 5-inch Z-Man Senna jerk shad, and that was my first plastic to use on. I really liked it because it was soft, it was easy to push the hook through, and then it didn't tear up. I've used some of these for maybe 5 or 6 fishing trips where we've caught upwards of 30 trout on every trip, and just came home, used them again the next trip. So you can see that the weight is clear back here, and your line tie is up there. So every time you twitch it, the thing will go to the side, one way or the other. And then on the fall, because the weight is back here, it balances it, and it falls horizontally, and it'll kind of wander around when it falls. We catch a lot of fish on the fall, and this morning it was extremely cold, and I've caught a number of fish this morning just dead sticking, just letting it fall, slowly drift down, and the fish will pick it up. So the hook is one of the best I think that Mustad's ever made. It's very sharp. The only drawback is that sometimes it'll bury it right through bone, so you want to be careful when you're handling these jigs. But that's the main idea. And a little history on it. It started out with a thing called the half shank jig, and this originally was just a regular lead head jig, and we were fishing for stripers. I needed a good jerk bait, and I couldn't think of anything that really worked, and finally I asked my partner if he had side cutters, and he did. I cut the lead head off the jig, and then I slid the shank back like that. So that's all the lead that's right back here, and I was using Berkeley Gulp 4-inch minnow, so the balance was just about right. since Berkeley Gulp is negatively buoyant. So it had a really good fall rate, and it fell horizontally, and then it just twitched and walked the dog like crazy. And it was fantastic for stripers. And then later on, I caught a lot of big fish with a 4-inch Berkeley Gulp minnow on this, and we call it the half shank because that's about all that's left of the lead. So it's a finesse system, and there's times when a regular lead head jig is necessary. You've got to cover a lot of water, you don't know where the fish are at, down deep, that sort of thing. But if you're able to use a jerkbait, a good jerkbait, that falls slow and that will walk the dog underwater, twitch, that's one of the best ways to catch fish. So that is the Jerkaholic Jig, finally, with all the videos that we've had out. And I just realized I'd never actually shown the jig because we were just having fun catching fish. So that's it. And another technique that I will pass along is to put your plastics in a Z-Man or the other bags. They're all vapor barrier bags, and you can put them in there and put your favorite scent in, and the plastic will absorb the scent. And that's much better than trying to put it on out on the boat, because after a few casts it'll come off. I prefer the smelly jelly made by Catcher Company, particularly if I'm having to apply it out on the boat. You get the jelly and it stays on much better. In this case, I've got the liquid smelly jelly, and I've tried different scents, and as far as I'm concerned, shrimp scent is the very best. So that's something you can do, and it's a good idea to rig your baits ahead of time. You'll see I've got a tackle box here with rigs all ready to go, so I don't have to rig them up while I'm out there on the boat, because it can be tricky, and that's a tricky thing about this system, is getting it on right. A jerkbait has got to be straight, it's got to be smooth and streamlined to walk the dog, to jerk back and forth. And of course the Z-Man plastic is really good because it's so soft and it gets the action. You know, a Zara Spook, most people walk the dog with a Zara Spook, and they're great. But the Z-Man plastic is so lifelike. Every part of that thing moves when you're twitching it, jerking it on the bottom, and pretty hard to beat. Besides that, it's very durable. So those are some of the tips that I'll pass along, and I think I may get a chance to video in my, what I would call my workshop, my man's cave, where I use a Dremel tool and make the molds myself. I make them all by hand. And here's another technique. Normally with a jerkbait you got to have a smooth, streamlined body, but this on the tail is now deformed. But earlier in the season I was using this Z-Man, I think it's Pogie Z. The main thing is it's kind of a shad or menhaden shape with the paddle tail, and you can't get full jerkbait action like you would with a good streamlined jerkbait, but you can to a certain extent, much better than a jig head. I mean, nothing wrong with a jig head, and you can use them a lot of places. Like if the wind's blowing real hard, you got to cover a lot of ground to find fish. Yeah, a lead head jig. But a lead head jig takes all the action out of your bait. So you got to keep that in mind, because what counts is how many fish you're going to catch. So let's see, what else haven't I covered? Oh, loop knots. I'll show you how I rig up. Here is an example. I use Shimano Claris rods. I like those for trout because they have a good parabolic action. Shimano reels, you can't get these anymore, unfortunately. The rear drags, I think they have a cheaper model now. This is the Symmetry SY 1500 RJ. I like the rear drag Once in a while in your lifetime, you're going to get a big fish, and you can't rely on the drag on a spinning reel. So this gives you some adjustment back here. Okay, I used Daiwa 8X braid, and I've ended up with 15-pound tests. You can cast a little farther with 10, but it's more prone to wind loops. But Daiwa I've found has been the best. It's real smooth, and it doesn't get as many wind loops. And even if you do get say a wind loop wind knot, then it's much easier to get out. And then I use about 6 feet of leader. In this case, I've retied a number of times. I tie it on with the FG knot. And the best bet is go to the Salt Strong website. And they do a great job of showing how to tie different knots. A lot of good techniques. Those guys do a very good job. But the FG knot is fantastic. It'll strip through the guides. Now I'm using Yozuri hybrid fluorocarbon, and 10-pound test has been working okay for the trout. You see I've tied a loop knot here. And on any lure, if possible, you should tie a loop knot, because that gives you freedom of action. And the Jerkaholic moves around so much, you want to take advantage of that and not dampen it with the knot tied right down around the eye. And that loop knot, again, is shown on Salt Strong. I learned it from them. I'd never had a lot of success with loop knots till I learned to do the one that they show. So I highly recommend that you go on their website. And that ugly color right there is bluegill. And last trip was on Valentine's Day, and you should look at that video at the numbers of fish and size of fish that we caught. 5-inch Z-Man jerk shad. So those are some tips, and give it a whirl, and I think it's going to pay off for it. Well, I was going to try to use a swimming pool to demonstrate what this thing looks like in the water, but I think you can see it here. I got the sun just right. I'm just barely touching it. Now see how that thing falls? I'll get it back up where we can see it again. Yeah, it's just pretty hard for a fish to resist it. Now I'll try to move along and jerk it. See how it goes to the side? That's because the weight's in the back. So all it takes is a little twitch, and this thing really gets active. And that's the secret behind the Jerkaholic jig. Yeah, we were going to try to get access to a swimming pool, but I've never gotten around to it. And there's not too many outdoor swimming pools that have got water in them this time of the year. And if they did, it would be hard to swim in the ice.